Matt Mahlum may be most well known for playing drums with almost every band in town. Matt shares his musical influences and how he has flourished creatively as a songwriter during COVID. He also shares how he's approaching his new album and gives us insight into his journey picking up a guitar and stepping to the front of the stage. I'm Amy, and he's Brent, and this is La Crosse Local.
My name is Matthew Scott Mahlum. I was born at Lutheran Hospital in La Crosse, Wisconsin on July 7th, 1982. Frankly, I was born into a musical family. My grandfather was a part of a family band. He passed his love of music on to my mom and her brother, all while my dad was growing up here in La Crosse, and he is a lover of music as well. And so when my mom and my dad both met, they both were very, very good vocalists, heavily involved in the church and doing youth choir and church choir things. And so it's just been in my blood since I was little. And so I get to be 2-3 years old, and my mom notices that I'm banging on the pots and pans like little kids do with the spoons and such, but I'm doing it in time at 2 and 3 years old. Like I'm playing the drums. So my mom got me a drum set for Christmas, and I've been playing the drum set pretty much straight on since I'm 4 years old. Like I said, I got a musical family. My brother is actually a performer in musical theater. Went to college and then went and got his master's in vocal performance. He's got a degree in music, master's in vocal performance. And he does like Broadway stuff and like summer stock and like, big Broadway musicals that tour the country, and like he'll go on cruise ships or whatever. He's kind of a mercenary musician. So long story super long is I've just always been surrounded by music, always. Grew up with a piano since my mom had a piano in the house. When I was little, we did a lot of church stuff. My mom would sing. We were Lutheran. My mom would sing every Monday, Thursday when they would veil the cross at our church. We're not super involved in that. I'm not at all anymore. Yeah, it's been an enormous part of my life, my entire life. I could go from there on to all of the things that I did growing up involving music. Drums in the show choir band. I played tuba in the concert and marching band all the way up till sophomore year. I got kicked out because I was that guy. Like I said, I've just been doing it my whole life. It's what I do. I wish I could make, a full-time living out of it, but I have a certain standard of living that I wanna be able to accomplish. And I don't know if you've heard of the term struggling musician, but that's a real thing.
I've seen you've been playing for probably over a decade in local bands as the drummer. Finally seeing you singing, I think over the last couple of years, it was just such a surprise for me, and I don't know why. It just kind of blew me away. I forgot where it was. I think maybe at Pearl Street Brewery or something like that. What are some of your musical influences that you started out as being a drummer and then moving into now you're kind of like a singer-songwriter?
Right. Another loaded question with probably a long-winded answer. In terms of the drum set, when I was super duper little, it was all Michael Jackson and nothing but. It was Thriller on repeat. It was anything that Michael Jackson was doing. So whoever was putting those studio tracks down is really where I got the bulk of my learnings when I was little. I will say that I had and I'm going to throw a shout out to a dude that I haven't talked to in probably 20 years, Craig Juronic. But Craig babysat me. Once I got a little older, he babysat me for the whole summer. He would come to my house every day, and he would babysit me and just hang out with me. And, I'd go with him to his baseball practices, and we get into all sorts of shit. He showed up one day. I was listening. I had kind of gotten into some of that early 90s rap, the MC Hammers and those sorts of things. And I was kind of on a pop music thing. I was a young kid, didn't really know any better. He shows up with Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood record, like the tape, the cassette, and he changed my life. And it sounds so ridiculous. Literally, Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood album changed my life because I knew that this hard rock stuff was out there, but I didn't realize. And this Craig knew that I'd like to bang around on the drums on the front porch, and he was like, man, you got to check out this drummer. And so I started listening to Tommy Lee a little bit on that record. And it was just that record that turned me into instruments and rock and roll and guitars and light shows and the whole thing, man. Like, but it was just something about banging drums and, just, so oddly enough, Tommy Lee, then really I think my main influence on drums is probably Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Kind of deep pocket rock funk, kind of that stuff that just makes you bob your head a little bit. That's really my favorite music to play on the drums, is that just deep pocket kind of rock and funk makes you just want to give that stinky face, like, shit. A little blues guitar, funky bass, whatever. When it comes to the singer-songwriter stuff, I will be just straight up honest with you. It is impossible to even try to put a finger on who or what or how I'm influenced on that stuff, because I take little bits, and I think any good, I shouldn't say that because a lot of people are 1 or 2 dimensional. I like to think of myself as 50 dimensional when it comes to where I draw influence from. It's both music, it's writing, it's, just life experience, it's emotion in the moment of when I'm writing the song. So I can go out and say the Beatles and Pink Floyd, and I can tell you that I hate the Rolling Stones. I do not like AC/DC. I'm sorry for people that do. I like bluegrass. I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff in jazz. Just so much of it. Pink Floyd, though, is going to be the one that's my number one favorite band. Listen to a lot of jam bands, The Fish, The Dead, The Grateful Dead, and the Allman Brothers are huge influences on me. Dark Side of the Moon is number one for me.
Me and you got to chat a little bit out at the Driftless Music Gardens watching.
Yeah, we got to hang for a while, like from a few feet away. That was cool.
You were drumming for Greg Hall on the Wrecking Ball. How has the COVID experience affected you musically? I know you've done a few live sessions or streams on Facebook. You do have a full-time gig. How has this experience been for you? Has it been creative, or has it just been a nightmare?
COVID has had one of the more profound effects on me of anything in my life ever. I was scheduled to go into the studio in the first weekend of April to start what was going to be my solo record. I was going to go in and I was actually going to do a thing. Well, the shutdown happened about 2 weeks before that, and all of a sudden they weren't really accepting guests into the studio, and so that project got put on hold, unfortunately. So what I did is I went and I bought an audio interface, which is just a thing you can plug a microphone and an instrument into, and then it runs into my laptop, and I began recording things. I recorded about 40 songs, 8 tracks. Almost every one of them was full, the 8 tracks, so that means 8 parts, 8 instruments, whatever the case. None of them are all totally done. I did it to give an idea to the producer of the project, kind of what I was thinking. COVID brought about all these emotions, both good and bad. All of a sudden, I'm working from home. I can't go places. So all these crazy emotions, and I ended up writing probably, I think it was 7 new songs throughout the course of COVID, and then I ended up recording them. I think they're going to be 4 or 5 of them that end up part of the album. I think there's some of my better tunes.
You're going into the studio now after a couple months delay. That's what's next, right? A new album.
Yes, unless other things present themselves between now and then. Anybody that's familiar with putting together a record of any kind, whether it be a full length or whether it be something smaller, it can take a while and it can go really fast, and it really just depends on how it all works out. So yeah, the idea is that I, because I did all that pre-production stuff, I have an idea of how I want things to sound. It shouldn't be that difficult to get them to sound that way. Now, the producer may have a different idea, and that's why I'm working with him, because he knows what he's talking about, and he's an artist, and he has a vision. So there are a couple other opportunities for some drive-in shows and a couple other things that I haven't really been able to connect on, because right now I kind of don't have a band. I kind of do, but COVID has, understandably has people wanting to maybe hunker down and maybe not real comfortable with playing shows and, doing things like that. So
Are you going to be doing this all on your own? You said you recorded the songs, you sang the songs. Are you going to be involving anybody else, or is this kind of like, might make it a little bit quicker? Is it just going to be you?
I don't know. I can guarantee that I'm going to have other players on the record, regardless of how much of the work I do on my own. I don't really know how to play keys. I can throw some keyboards together, but nothing that I'm going to put on a record. So I'm pretty fortunate, to know some pretty top shelf musicians that play all the instruments, and a lot of them have been very supportive of me over the last few years, making this transition into kind of more of a front man and a singer-songwriter. So I'll have to have some keyboard players come in. My big brother Cheech is going to play at least a solo or two on the record at minimum. One of the difficult things for me is going to be, limiting who do I not ask. I've built so many solid relationships over all these years, playing shows with the Smoking Bandits and playing with Greg Hall and all these other people. I've met so many incredible musicians and made so many good friendships that I don't want to like insult anyone by not asking them. I'm fortunate in that, and I'm also fortunate in that they're all some monster players. Whoever might be listening to this that doesn't know about lacrosse's music scene and just the Goliath musicians that are in this town and in this area, I mean, within 100 miles of here, you go up to Minneapolis and holy shit, guys, there's guys and girls up there that, man, why aren't they famous? So to answer your question, yeah, there'll be people on the record, I hope.
Where can people find out more about you and kind of follow along? If you have any upcoming shows or you're going to be releasing some sneak peeks in the new album, where can people follow you?
I got to be just totally honest. I've been, over the last year and a half, a little bit more hands-off on the Facebook page, but Matt Mahlum Music on Facebook, that's the hub, I guess, but I haven't been super active. Hopefully one of these days you'll be able to find out about a website or something like that.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Locals. Subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.